President Muhammadu Buhari, the immediate past president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is in the news again. This time, it is the story that he lives off the rent he collects from one of his two houses. And this again appears not to have got the type of response that the former president would have loved to have. This time again, the former president seems to have done what only him can do, that is deconstructing the myth of General Muhammadu Buhari. This is the other side. My name is Rumande Shawulu. President Muhammadu Buhari was born in Daura in December 1942. He had military training in Kaduna, the Great Britain, India, and the United States. After the military coup of 1975 against General Yakubu Gowon, he was appointed the military governor of the Northeast. And the Northeast today comprises of Yobe, Gombe, Borno, Bauchi, Adamawa, and parts of Taraba State. He was thereafter assigned to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources as minister. He was reassigned to military duties after the 1975. He was assigned to military duties after the 1979 transition to civil rule. And at different times, he served as military secretary and GOC, two very top military postings in Nigeria. The military took over from civilians on December 31st, 1983, barely 3 months into the second term of the presidency of President Shehu Shagari, and General Muhammadu Buhari was appointed by his colleagues as the head of state. Before him, no previous head of state had had the prior experience of being a governor and a minister. However, in spite of all that the military promised, when he took over, the economy started a free fall, and the polity became so heated that his colleagues in the Supreme Military Council decided to ease him out. In August 1984, President Muhammadu Buhari was eased out of power. And during the time that he was in power, however, he enacted laws which were not applicable to him, but were applicable to other people. While he was president, General Muhammadu Buhari enacted anti-press laws and sent people, especially politicians, into prison. But most of the people that he sent into prison were not members of the ruling NPN. They were members of the opposition parties, mainly the NPP and the JNPP. He also enacted laws which were not applicable to him and the people that were close to him. He had 3 young men executed for drug trafficking, a crime that they committed long before he enacted the law that made their activity illegal. And so, for the first time, and perhaps the last time in the history of Nigeria, we had people being executed, being killed for crimes that they committed before the law was enacted. And of course, it is interesting to note that the government under him imposed a rule that no underage persons, because of economic crisis, should go for any of the pilgrimages, especially the Muslim Hajj. In August 1985, President Buhari, the military head of state, was overthrown by members of his group, and he was thrown into prison. He stayed in prison, in Benin prison, for 3 years and remained completely out of politics until General Sani Abacha, one of the people that overthrew him in 1985, decided to give him a reprieve. Thereafter, President Muhammadu Buhari became very active in politics. Those who were disenchanted with the way things were happening in Nigeria flocked to him. He was seen as the person who was so disciplined that he could bring Nigeria out of the crisis that Nigeria had. He was also seen as a man who was not corrupt and who would fight corruption and bring sanity to the politics of this country. He contested all elections, all presidential elections from 2003 to 2015. In 2003, he ran on the platform of the APP against his former boss, President Olusegun Obasanjo. Remember that under President Olusegun Obasanjo, Muhammadu Buhari was the Minister of Petroleum Resources. In 2007, he contested against President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua and lost. In 2011, he contested against President Goodluck Jonathan and lost the election. In 2015, President Goodluck Jonathan lost the election and conceded the elections to Buhari, and Buhari became president for 8 years. During these 8 years, President Muhammadu Buhari was supposed to excel, to show the world that he was prepared to rule Nigeria, that he had all the experience, he had the nationalism, and he had everything that was needed to move Nigeria from where it was to where Nigerians wanted to be. Even those who opposed him were happy that at last you had someone who was disciplined, someone who was incorruptible, someone who loved Nigeria, and that had become the president. And they expected that as a former military man, President Muhammadu Buhari was going to fight and destroy Boko Haram. Unfortunately, years after he became president, the economy of the country nosedived. Nigeria moved from being the biggest economy in Africa to now being the third or so economy in Africa. Nigerians moved from being just a poor country to becoming a dimensionally poor country. And Nigeria took over from India as the capital of poverty in the world. In terms of insecurity, what did our general do? The insecurity that had affected 4 local governments in Borno State expanded to several places, including Taraba, Plateau, Benue, Niger, Kaduna, Sokoto, Kebbi, and Zamfara states, to the extent that the bandits or terrorists or whatever you call them have taken over large swaths of territory in different parts of the country. We are hearing leaders, community leaders from the southwest and the southeast and the south crying that bandits had taken over their forests and were stopping people from farming. From having just Boko Haram and ISWAP, today we have what you call bandits, herdsmen, and so forth, roaming around our rural areas, destroying the economy and keeping people in perpetual fear. As a matter of fact, it is believed, some statistics that came out recently showed that over 2 trillion naira may have been collected by bandits from poor people as ransom fees in the last 1 or 2 years. Why did this happen to President Muhammadu Buhari? Unlike President Olusegun Obasanjo, President Yar'Adua, and Jonathan, President Muhammadu Buhari had the best of times with the legislature. The legislature did not oppose him. There were no threats of impeachment, unlike the previous persons. And almost everything that the president wanted the legislature to do, the National Assembly did it for the president. As a matter of fact, Senate President told Nigerians that the National Assembly would do anything that the president wanted. So Buhari became the most powerful president Nigeria ever had, with very little opposition from any quarters. However, rather than unite, President Muhammadu Buhari polarized Nigeria. Buhari, the unifier of Nigeria, left Nigeria more divided than he met it. And by the time he was leaving, the demands, the calls, and the protests for secession from Nigeria had increased. We started hearing of a strengthening struggle for Yoruba nation. The IPOB has remained strong. the Middle Belt people are talking about also leaving and not being part of the North if Nigeria were to split. We've had rumblings in the South-South. And so Buhari, the man who was supposed to unify Nigeria, the man who was supposed to stamp out corruption from Nigeria, appears to have left the opposite. President Muhammadu Buhari seems to have successfully deconstructed General Muhammadu Buhari, the man who was perceived to be disciplined, non-corrupt, a unifier, the man who was believed by his supporters to have the capacity to take them out of poverty and give them a life that they had long wanted a leader to give. Why did it happen this way? In my opinion, I think it happened this way because Buhari chose a path that was different from what Mandela chose. Mandela, when he became president, chose to ignore the past. He drew a line between the present and the past, left the past to heal itself, and decided that he was going to create a joint and a shared future of prosperity for the people of South Africa. Buhari, on the other hand, was kept hostage by his past rhetoric of ethnic and religious discrimination. He believed only in himself and the people around him. And so he created a system where most of the sensitive political appointments were people who belonged to either his religion or his tribe. And of course, he had the opportunity to be a leader when Benue State was burning, when Fulani headsmen were destroying Benue and sent nearly 1 million or more people into refugee camps. Rather than do that, when the people of Benue, of all political shades, went to visit him, President Muhammadu Buhari forgot that Benue people rejected President Jonathan to support him. Rather than hold the Fulani leaders to account, he told Benue people to go back and learn how to live with their neighbors. President Mandela sought to create a shared future of prosperity. President Buhari sought a future of ethnic and religious dominance. President Mandela went out of his way to bring in trusted people from all sides. As a matter of fact, when they were looking for people to be in his cabinet, they had to go out to seek for an Indian to be part of the cabinet. Buhari, on the other hand, will not trust anything into the hands of anyone that he did not know. And that, of course, created problems. He abandoned and revised the electoral reforms created by his predecessors, which factors helped him to come to power, and created a system where elections no longer have credibility. And of course, by taking the road that he took, President Muhammadu Buhari demystified himself and turned himself into an ordinary politician. History usually does not spare people who do such things. It is not him and his supporters who will write the last story about his time in government. And even now that he cries that he is broke, people do not believe him. The perception is that the corruption that took place under him was the greatest that had ever taken place before he became president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So much so that even the party that took over from him, which is still his party, are complaining that he left the country in shambles, that many institutions were not working, and that the corruption that the government engaged in had thrown the economy into what people are suffering from today. What are your views? What are your comments about President Muhammadu Buhari? Do you think he left a legacy that we should be proud of, or he came to power and demystified himself? Your comments are welcome. Please remember to like, to share, and to subscribe to our channel. This is the other side. My name is Romande Shawulu.